I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. I'm talking about the beautiful man, Mr. Ozzy Osbourne. That was Black Sabbath, but hey, we also have someone else in the house. I'm talking about Mr. Chris Shaffer. Yeah. Oh, yeah. How's it going, Chris?
It's going well. Unfortunately, I'm not Iron Man, but we can't all be.
No, only Ozzy Osbourne can be that. Now, when he died yesterday, I was doing a recording with Dr. Tortorich, which came out on Friday, and I figured you and I would have a little, do a little tribute. And by the way, we're going to talk about health here because, well, Ozzy was in ill health, and we're going to talk about that because I had a girlfriend. She was several years older than me. It's one of the few women besides Serena who I had a long-lasting relationship with. And she was much older than me. She was more than 10 years older than me. She was the woman I was basing when I was on Oprah, when they were asking about, older women with younger men. That's why I had, firsthand knowledge of that. It's because I was in a long-term relationship with an older woman. And people used to ask me what that was like. And I said, well, about the only thing we don't agree on is, music. Like we grew up with different music and that's about it. But, truly love this woman. And even after the relationship failed, for whatever reason, we remained friends until her death from Parkinson's disease. And we found out yesterday that Ozzy finally succumbed to the same disease, Parkinson's, special kind of Parkinson's. Chris, I've told this story on the show before, but we have new people listening all the time. And since the man is no longer with us, I figured I would talk about Ozzy just a little bit. We lived near each other in Calabasas. He lived in Hidden Hills. And Ozzy was one of these guys, I was always on a bicycle back then, always. And some of these guys, they think their shit don't stink with these G-Wagons and all this kind of crap that they drive out in LA. They almost try to run you off the road, even though you're in a bike. We have bike lanes out there, and they still try to F with you a little bit. Not Ozzy. You always knew when Ozzy was passing you. And I'm not saying, I've said this when the man was alive. You knew when he was passing you because he was in a Range Rover, like the big giant, Land Rover or whatever. And he would always give you a wide berth. Like he would go all the way into the other lane to go around you. And he was always driving slow and deliberate, right? That's how you knew it was Ozzy. And I famously told a story on this show where at the end of a long ride one day, I was back in the parking lot in Calabasas, and I was in the same Starbucks where I met Serena. She and we were already in a relationship at this point. It was 15 years ago, maybe. And there was a guy right in front of me shuffling up. I came in, the sunlight was still in my eyes. I couldn't, it felt kind of dark in there. There was one person walking in front of me and I walked behind him. And as soon as he got up and started making his order, I knew exactly who it was because, he spoke in that very, he was always kind of mumbling, which was crazy because he had such a wonderful voice when he was singing. Right. And I went, oh my God, that's Ozzy. And it wasn't the first time I've seen him around. You see, you live in that neighborhood, you see the same celebrities over and over. And right after he ordered his thing, he turned and he looked back and he saw me and he saw that I had all of the bike stuff on, minus the helmet. And he started talking to me about cycling and how much he loved cycling. When he was a kid in England, the bike meant something to him. It was transportation. And he says, don't you find this dangerous? And he even mentioned, he goes, I always try to make sure I give the cyclist a lot of room. And I said, Mr. Osbourne, I realize that because I always notice when you go around me, you're in that green Range Rover. You give me a lot of room. He goes, oh yeah, I always want to make sure. I always feel bad for you guys out there. And he's talking. He went on for like 5 minutes. He just went on and on. And I noticed a line of people was behind me, and I started to feel self-conscious, or, I was like, what's going on here? He's not stopping. But then I realized that he had commanded an audience. No one in line was in a rush at that moment because Ozzy was talking to not just me, he was talking to us, and he knew he was. And the barista, the guy taking your order and the whole thing, everyone stopped. Time stopped in that Starbucks that day while Ozzy Osbourne held court. Right? And the only words I said to him was the words about, hey, yeah, I know Mr. Osbourne, you know. And he talked for as long as he wanted to talk, which was about 5 minutes. He then mumbled, have a good day. And he shuffled over and got his iced coffee and shuffled out of the place. And then as soon as he walked out, it was almost like the place came alive again. It was like God left and we can now be humans again, right?
Everybody went back to being in a rush.
Yeah, but he was that guy. I never knew him. I know nothing about him other than, and my younger brother loves that story. Every Thanksgiving, he asks me to tell that story. Tell the story about the time you met Ozzy Osbourne, because my family knows all the celebrities I've been around. They're much bigger than Ozzy, right? But it was the fact that he was that human being. He was a one of a kind. And no one, had a problem with stopping for just a moment and enjoying, one of the rock gods. And, I thought about it last night. Here we are today. I'm playing Iron Man. I thought about all the songs we can play, No More Tears. We could have played, last night I played the one, Close Your Eyes, with Lita Ford. There's so many songs that talk, where he talked about death and dying. But he was the Prince of Darkness, right? I mean, he created that whole thing. Any thoughts, Chris?
I think so. When was that, Vinny?
When he stopped me.
Yeah.
Let's call it 2000, and I was still in the heart of like trying to win ultra races. Let's call it 2008 or 9. So we're talking 15, 16 years ago.
15, maybe? 16 years ago.
17 maybe. Yeah, something like that.
So he was diagnosed in 2003.
Yeah.
So he was already 5 years in at that point, or 6 years in at that point, which is crazy to think. Because I don't think they revealed that he had Parkinson's till 2020, when it became really obvious.
Yeah, but he used to kind of shuffle his feet when he walked back then. Because like I said, everybody used to hang around. It was called the Commons, right? That's the place everyone in Calabasas went. Fancy stores where you could buy stuff, and so you would see him around. Like he's one of those figures. He's recognizable. Right. So yeah, it's a slow killer. It killed my friend Marilyn, and she died just 2 years ago. And I still think about her. As a matter of fact, I was just texting with her son yesterday, who, by the way, quit his whole career at some point and became a trainer. Right. He did well, and he felt like he never did what he wanted to do. He always loved what I did. And I convinced him. I said, yeah, go back to school, get a degree. He knew a lot about the body, and he became a trainer. Yeah.
That's great.
I
think Parkinson's, and you and I have talked about ALS
Mm-hmm.
being one of the things that terrifies me.
Yeah.
Like most things, having a heart attack, having a stroke, if you're taking care of yourself and it happens,
Right.
right? Parkinson's and ALS, there's not a lot of correlation necessarily between what you're doing and when or if that happens to you.
Yeah,
And
it can happen. Yeah, you could be very young and it can happen.
Well, and that's, I think what happened in his case, he was diagnosed with Park2.
Yeah, a certain strain of Parkinson's.
Which is usually what you see in what they call early onset Parkinson's. And that can happen as early as 35,
Ugh.
which is insane because we think of Parkinson's the same way we think of dementia,
Right.
which is like, oh, it's an old people's disease. But if you have the gene anomaly that causes Park2, it can hit you at 30, 35, 40.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot that you can do about it, at least as far as I know.
No, there isn't. There's no cure for it. Same with ALS, which is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, that he got while he was still playing baseball. I mean, that's how young that can hit you. And that there was a player from the Saints, a guy who blocked a punt that led off to the year they went to the Super Bowl, right? It was that year right after Katrina, and I can't think of the guy's name, but there's a statue of him blocking the punt, like in New Orleans, and it's a big deal for the. That guy's been in a wheelchair, with his head strapped in, with ALS for a long time, and you just don't know. That's why I tell everyone, this ain't a dress rehearsal. You got to do it now. If whatever you want to do, you have to do right now. And we don't know much about Ozzy's death. We don't know how he died. There's some thought that he might have gone to Switzerland or something and, called his own shot, that kind of thing. But he did a concert recently, and he had worked with his old band, Black Sabbath, to do the concert. He wanted to go back home and start where he, go back to the beginning type of thing, and went through a concert and did the whole thing. Right. I think he had to sit down, but he did it. Right. And someone was telling me, and I haven't seen it yet, he said to the audience, I won't be around much longer. Right. He was calling his shot. And you got to respect someone who can do that. My mom's brother did a very similar thing. He had a cancer, and they were going to do more chemo and this and that and the whole thing. And he's way younger than my mom. He wasn't even 80 yet. He was like 76, 77. And he said, just send me home and put me on hospice. And I just want to go out on my own terms. Very religious man, this kind of thing. You have to respect that, right? You have to respect what these people are doing.
And at some point, you have to know that you've done what you've been here to do. And so that raises the question, and I know this is a little self-serving, but what do you want your legacy? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I did, because I was faced with my own mortality, at least the first time I went through chemo and all that, because the cancer was much worse the first time, because we caught it the second time in a lot of time. And there was some question about, whether I would make it through or not. And I'm downplaying that to some degree. And I had a lot of time to sit around and think. I had a few friends I wrote about it in the book. I had a few friends that when I figured out that day, when I got off the bike and I got to my friend's house, who was an oncologist, and she was crying. And, you're thinking, geez, oncologists don't cry, right?
Great bedside manner. Thanks for...
Yeah. Well, her closest friend, she knows what's going on. I'm like, if she's crying, this is not garden variety cancer. right? I did the arithmetic.
Yeah,
So
there's no sugarcoating it if your oncologist comes in crying.
yeah, she told me to come to her house, right? She got me off of the bike. Folks, if you want to read this, there's a book I wrote called Fitness Confidential that became a multi-gazillion bestseller, and it was up for Audible Book of the Year. I'm bragging about the book because who would have ever thought an idiot like me would ever have a hit book? And so I wrote about the whole experience. And I remember, and I was on chemo, and Patty had me released to her house in Bel Air. Bel Air is the fancy Beverly Hills. If you want to know, like Fresh Prince, the mansions, and that's Bel Air, right? So I'm convalescing at Patty's house, and she's off being a doctor every day, and she leaves me there with her maid, who I'm not friends with, right? And I'm not supposed to really be around people. And the few friends I had, they were told that they couldn't, even if they came to visit me, they had to keep a distance, right? Because my immune system was shot. I wasn't allowed to hug or anything. I was supposed to be wearing an N95 mask and all this kind of stuff. It was rough because I didn't have that many visitors, which made me realize, oh, wait, I haven't collected a lot of friends. And all of my clients, these are Hollywood types. I mean, they called and they were well-wishing, but I'm sure they were also going, we need to find another trainer, right? I realized how expendable I was as a human being in that moment. And you can't think of anything else. Did I tell you the part of that where I bought a Corvette while I was on chemo?
I don't think so.
Do you know that story? My life was like, I didn't have anyone in my life. And I was, one day, I saw in Patty's house, her son had Car and Driver magazine. So I took it to the bathroom with me. And I just opened to a page, and it was a short story of this new Corvette, this new 2006 or 7 Corvette was coming out. And they put it on the track at the Nürburgring, and it beat the Porsche 911. It beat this car. It beat that car. It was like when Corvette started coming into its own as a world beater for like $70,000 or something like that, right? And I was like, look at that. I'm going to die, and Corvette's finally getting, because I've always been a fan of the Corvette. I grew up poor white kid in the country. The Corvette was like a big deal, right? So I thought about it for a couple of days, and I went, here's what I'm going to do. I called the dealership down in San Diego because they sold a lot of Corvettes. And I said, hey, I would like this new Corvette that's coming out. And they said, well, it's already out. And I went, okay. I would like a red one with, tan leather seats, the light tan leather seats. And they were like, hold on there, cowboy. That's a special order. And I was like, how long will that take to come in? They said, like 6 months. And I thought about the chemo I was on, and I went, you know what? That's fine. Let's order it. And all right, what else do you want on it? I was like, I want the works. And, I just ordered this car. I sat with it. I was sitting there on the phone that day with this guy going, you sure you want this? No one put it on there. Put it on there. I want it all. And here was my thought pattern.
If you die before it comes in, you don't have to pay for it.
Right. They said, well, you got to put a deposit down. I said, how much do you need? They said, well, we need like $1,800. I went, can I mail you a check? They go, yeah, as soon as we get the check, we're going to order the car. And I said, all right. This is back in the days when you mailed checks, right? We were still doing that. So I mailed them out a check, and my feeling was, if I die, they got $1,800 and they ain't gonna sell this car to someone else. But if I live, I got myself a Corvette. That was my thought pattern, right?
Makes sense.
And I lived, and there you have it. I'd forgotten about the whole thing. I was on the back end of cancer. I was able to work a little bit again and all this kind of stuff. And one day a call came in and I ignored it. I was like, oh, spam, And then they called again and I listened to the voicemail. I was like, hey, this is so-and-so down at such and such. Your Corvette is in. I'm like, oh, yeah, I bought a Corvette.
Oh, yeah. Now I owe them 88 grand.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't cheap. And so I got my buddy Miran, who he had a twin engine plane, and he flew me down to San Diego, and I got my super hot Corvette, drove back. Yeah,
and it took you 9 hours to get from San
Diego.
It
literally took me like 6 hours because you're creeping and crawling, and it's got 6-gear manual transmission. I don't think I saw second gear until I got past Redondo Beach. But
all right.
But I realized during that time with cancer, and I guess I'm talking to a lot of people who, I talk to a lot of cancer patients on the phone calls every day. And I remember thinking, what do I want? We're going back to the legacy. It's like, what, my friends, I didn't really keep up with friends down in Louisiana. And, okay, where am I going to be buried? I'm thinking of all this stuff when I'm not buying Corvettes, right? It's like, I told my parents I barely have cancer. Like, they think I have like the common cold of cancer, right? When I took a leak, it looked like rust water was coming out. I mean, it was weird. It was like everything was just, I was dying, and I was telling my parents, oh yeah, I'm great. Like, I couldn't even call them on certain days because I knew that my voice was too weak. I would have to work it up a bit to talk to my parents. And so, yeah, it was like, I'm going to die, and I didn't really do anything. I didn't do anything. All I did was, all I cared about was like working with rich people, and they handed me money. And these people aren't even showing up to say hi. They don't really care that much, And, look, a few of them did, right? And the celebrities did more than like the agents and all that, because I guess they figured they didn't want to have oh shit, Vinny's dying. I can't be the celebrity that doesn't show up to go say hi, So there was that.
Put a Vinnie Tortorich flag in their Twitter bio.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what went on, right? And I said, if I get out of this, I got to figure out a way to do more with my life. That's why, as you know, Chris, we don't make any money doing this podcast. I can do ads head to toe on this podcast. We do very few ads. I make enough money on this show through people, giving us, donations, and people, signing up for VIP to pay the people who work behind the scenes. Debbie, Leona, Anna, you, and I could go on. But this has never been a money-making venture. This was, hey, I'm going to do everything I can to help people do better. Right? And that's what we've been doing with all of it. I make my living on vitamins and coffee, folks. Go out and buy purevitaminclub.com and purecoffeeclub.com. Go get my coffee. That's how I make a living. I don't make it on this podcast. Even the movies, every time I do a documentary, you know what I do with the money I make, right, Chris? I go make another documentary.
Yeah, you're still rolling in from that Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I'm still using Kickstarter. Now, the last one, we got to still figure out what to do with that in order to get some of that money back. I think we came clean on it through Amazon, but we got to do better than that, right? That movie's still not really been out there, but that's the world we live in, right? We're all here, and we should be helping someone else. That's why I don't talk about religion or politics on this show. This is not about my religion or my politics. I don't care what anyone's politics are. I really don't. Democrat, Republican, middle of the road guy. What do they call it? Independent, middle of the road guy. Independent. I'm happy for all of you, man. Every time a president comes in, my feeling is, I know half the country wants that, like when Biden was in, half the country wanted Biden to fail. And now half the country wants Trump to fail. Everybody, I want them all to succeed, because if they succeed, we succeed. What's wrong with that? Right? Why can't more people do that? Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think the problem is we don't look at it from a legacy perspective, right? It's what can I do right now to get reelected? And if we do at least what parts of this administration appears to be doing, like if you look at Maha,
right?
It really is about fixing some of the systemic things, because he knows he's never going to get elected to anything.
Right. Yeah, he's. But look, I said that about him, love him or hate him, and I know a lot of people are going, "Oh, you're agreeing with, that guy." It's like, I said this before the election. It's like, if somehow, whether the right or the left gets in, if somehow they get RFK Jr. in there, and I get it, some people, he's an anti-vaxxer. I don't care. He's been doing some good things. I'm sure he's been doing some stuff that's pissing people off too. I get it. But we needed someone to at least go in and shake things up, because nothing was being, the inmates were running the asylum, and that's not a good thing. Right? You stand for something or you fall for nothing. So that's where we are with that.
So, Vinny, did you see the big Maha health news today?
No. Actually, today on the 23rd of July.
Yeah. Coke is bringing real sugar Coke back to the U.S.
Really?
And every news story I've seen is like, nutritionists say sugar isn't good for you. Like, who knew?
So we're taking sugar out to put other sugar in, and that's supposed to be good? Or give me more information, Chris, because Coke is still Coke. It's still 38 grams of sugar. Now, look, high fructose corn syrup is worse than cane sugar, but that's like saying, okay, I'm still smoking Camels, but I got the ones with the filter.
I stopped taking the filter off.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the thing that's kind of funny, right? Because we've seen a lot of people say, we're getting rid of the artificial dyes, we're moving to a more natural product. And a company like Coke doesn't really have anywhere to go, because no matter what they put in it, it's a bottle of hot garbage from a health perspective.
Right.
But they do kind of have one trigger to pull, and it's move from HFCS, or high fructose corn syrup, back to actual sugar. And it appears that they may be doing that. But the real win out of all of this is every news story today is about how this isn't a win, because sugar is still sugar. I'm like, where has this been the last 20 years? Right? Like, you don't see 100 news stories in a day when they release the new Coke Zero about how terrible regular Coke is. But they make a move to a slightly better thing, and then the entire news cycle is about how sugar is bad for you. I'll take that as a win. Personally, I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, people have this feeling that somehow real sugar is somehow way better than high fructose corn syrup, and the answer is no. It's all sugar. Now, you could take intelligent people. So give me a moment to throw my buddy Dan completely under a bus. So Dan was with me and Don hiking up at Whitney a few weeks ago. And Dan's a streaker. You know what a streaker is, right? Not from the 70s, but it's people that do something every single day. They have streaks that Dan is that kind
So
of
not
speaker.
the runs onto a baseball field.
Yeah. Oh, yes, they
Streak.
call him the streak. Remember that song?
No, but
I will find it for the end of the show.
I have no doubt.
So Dan, every morning we would meet for breakfast at the Alabama Cafe over in Lone Pine. And every day I would get an omelet with cheese and some kind of meat in it. And they would ask me if I wanted potatoes, and I would say no. But they need to put something on the plate. So I would have them put fruit because it's easier to leave fruit alone versus potatoes. When potatoes are there, you start getting a little taste of that potato and you just lose your mind. So, and they're not going to just bring it out without anything, but they would bring out the bread too. So, and you could say 5 times, don't bring me the bread. They got the bread and it's already buttered and the whole thing. And I would just give the bread to Dan because Dan was eating all of his potatoes and all of the bread. He was spreading that jam on there. You know those little packets of jam? You know what I'm talking about? You pull the little Mylar top off.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing those. And I would be done with my meal and drinking coffee and watch Dan for the next 20 minutes, put that stuff on there. Dan has never had, and he's proud to tell you this, Dan has never had a cup of coffee in his life. Proud to tell you that. But me and Don, wait, hang on.
It's Friday, 5 o'clock.
Both Don and I got into an argument with Dan, a friendly argument, because every morning he was ordering pineapple juice. He'd bring him a little can, he'd pour it in a cup, pineapple juice. Well, like on day 4, when he was eating all of his bread and jam and all the crap and all of my bread, he said, I would like a pineapple juice to go with all the rest of my sugars and grains. And the girl goes, oh, we're out. Would you like orange juice? And he said, no orange juice. So when he walked away, Don said, why won't you have orange juice? He goes, because it's added sugar. Pineapple juice has no added sugar. So I said, okay, Dan, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't know if they add sugar to concentrated orange juice, and I don't know if they add it or don't add it to pineapple juice. But what I do know is the reason they probably don't add it to pineapple juice is because it's so effing sweet to begin with that if you add sugar, your teeth are going to just fall out of your mouth, right? Well, a few hours later, I was in a grocery store with Don, and we couldn't stop talking about this added sugar. This is the only reason he won't drink orange juice. And I said, Don, I guarantee you, go look at all of the orange juice concentrate, the orange juice that's already made. Go look at all of it. I guarantee you that the pineapple juice is sweeter. So I don't want to exaggerate. You may have to look this up, Chris. But I want to say 6 ounces of pineapple juice, might be 8 ounces, which is a cup, had like 36 grams of sugar, whereas most of the orange juice only had 29 grams of sugar. So I was correct. He was actually getting more sugar than you get in a 12-ounce Coke, because a 12-ounce Coke has 38 grams of sugar. This was like 8 ounces with, I want to say 36 grams of sugar, which, again, the guy thought he was doing better. And when I said to him, sugar is sugar, he said, nope. And Dan's a smart man, a very smart man. He's like, it's not the same. This is natural sugar. And my answer is all sugar is natural sugar. Just like all cocaine is natural cocaine. It comes from something that's natural. It is what it is.
Not that I'm an expert on cocaine, but I happen to live in the country where it's produced.
Yeah, you do live near Bogota and Medellin. Yeah.
Yeah, I live just outside of Medellin.
Yeah.
You take a leaf, you soak it in gasoline. Like it's a processed form. right?
But so is sugar.
Everything is still there, right? According to my quick Googling, a cup of real pineapple juice is about 23 grams. A cup of orange juice is about 21 grams.
Yeah.
That's not better, whether it's regular sugar or not. And if we're talking a difference in 2 grams, it doesn't make a difference, right? 21 grams versus 23 grams or 29 versus 31, depending on the serving size that you're looking at. That doesn't make a difference to your liver. And that's why I brought this story up, because you're semi-famous for saying your liver is a meritocracy.
Right.
Right. And so whether it's coming from high fructose corn syrup or cane sugar, sugar is sugar. Now, are there other issues with how high fructose corn syrup is made versus cane sugar? And I don't know how many people have ever seen sugar cane and how it's processed.
Mm-hmm. I have.
That process is fairly simple, right? You run it through a press and you get cane juice out of it. High fructose corn syrup involves a whole bunch of chemicals and a whole bunch of different processes, right? Every little street in Colombia has some little old lady with a cane sugar press processing sugar cane, right? And they just run it through a mill, basically. You won't ever see somebody making high fructose corn syrup, except maybe on your buddy Mike Rowe's show, right? Like maybe he did an HFCS factory tour, but that doesn't mean it's better for your liver. So to me, the win here is the news cycle, where every news story I'm seeing today, Vinnie, is saying sugar is bad for you, whether it comes from high fructose corn syrup or sugar cane, which I don't remember a time where outside of maybe one or two things where they're like, we talked to a nutritionist and they said, don't eat sugar, where the entire cycle is dominated by how bad sugar is for you. And if nothing else comes out of this, that seems like a win to me, because we're actually making some progress against what happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where the sugar companies fought off all the researchers to say that fat was bad for you and sugar wasn't a problem. We're finally coming full circle on this. And people who don't listen to podcasts like this actually have a chance of seeing that message. Does that make sense?
You know, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. But by the way, a lot of those, you know, the reason media is all getting behind sugar, and before it was like, oh no, this is natural sugar, is because they hate RFK Jr.
And they'll take it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't care what the rationale behind the messaging is. The messaging is what's important there.
Right. Yeah, the message is finally getting out.
Exactly.
Love it.
And all it took was Coke saying, yeah, maybe we can really use real sugar again. Maybe you shouldn't drink Coke. You've been screaming that since the first episode of this podcast.
And by the way, Coke has used this kind of tactic before, right? You may be too young to remember this, but somewhere in the early 80s, Coke did a thing where they quit making Coke, the actual regular Coke, and they made what was called New Coke. And they had New Coke, and I still say that this was all just a big marketing ploy. They put New Coke out there, new everything, new ingredient, new everything, and it tasted different. And some people loved it, other people hated it. The one thing we do know is that it caused a lot of controversy, news stories, you know, billboards everywhere. You know, hey, this is taste test, original Coke and New Coke. Which one do you prefer? And of course, everyone on that commercial chose the New Coke. And they did all of that for a while, and no one was convinced. So then Coke came out with Coke Original Coke. They just brought it
Coke
back.
Classic.
Yeah, Coke Classic. And now you can't even find New Coke, right? New Coke doesn't exist anymore. It's just Coke Classic. But I don't know if that was a marketing ploy or what they decided to do, but it worked. Right?
Which, by the way, they got rid of New Coke pretty much right away. And they branded Coca-Cola as Coca-Cola Classic from the mid-'80s through 2009 because they didn't want anybody to associate it with New Coke, which is crazy to me because it took them 30 years to undo the damage, supposedly, of what they did by launching a slightly different formula that supposedly tasted better.
I'm reading right here, Chris. I said early 80s. It was April 1985. Coca-Cola introduced a reformulated version of the flagship drink known as New Coke. This new formula was sweeter, intended to better compete with Pepsi. However, the launch was met with widespread consumer backlash and protest. People, now we have protests because we don't like Gayle King, because I saw it. It said no Kings. Either that or they were trying to get rid of the hockey team. But I saw back then we were protesting about Coca-Cola. We've come a long way. To reinstate the original formula called Coca-Cola Classic, just 79 days later, 3 months later, they brought it right back, Chris.
So 1985 to 2009 or 2010, they had to use that branding.
Yeah.
And they finally felt safe to drop it in 2009 or 2010.
Back then, Coca-Cola, two of the biggest stars in the world. One was Michael Jackson, and the other one was the guy from the Commodores, Rich. I want to say Richie Sambora, but I'm talking about Lionel Richie. So they were two of the biggest pop stars in the world. And I want to say that Michael Jackson was with Pepsi and Lionel Richie was with Coke, or it was the other way around. And they would just run. It was like war. It was like the war of the brands, right? And that's what we were doing. That's all anyone cared about back then.
Did you know that Pepsi at one point had the 5th largest Navy in the world?
Navy?
So during the Cold War,
yeah,
they were both selling into Russia. I think it was Pepsi. And the Soviet Union owed them so much money for importing product that they ended up giving them decommissioned naval vessels to make their payments.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was Pepsi. It's either Pepsi or Coke.
That makes no sense.
I think it was Coke, made a clear version because one of the leaders in Russia didn't want to be seen drinking Coca-Cola.
Right.
So they made a clear version and put a red star on it so that it looked like he was drinking vodka.
Oh, God. What we won't do for money. Wow. Yeah. No, it's all crazy. The whole idea is nuts. What else? You got anything else there, Chris?
I do. Are you still doing your phone screen diet?
My what diet? Oh, yeah.
Your screen time diet?
Yeah. Yeah. It went up a bit when I was traveling because I was doing all my work on the phone, and it crept up to like 2 hours. But, I got it down to where I was doing somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes a day average. But the true average is right about an hour a day is what I'm doing. And that's about it.
The reason I bring that up, they just did a study of 100,000 kids between 18 and 24.
Yeah.
And they're saying any of these kids who had smartphones before 13 had substantially worse mental health. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but the fact that we're only looking at kids for this kind of stuff was something I wanted to talk through with you. Obviously, kids have an outsized impact from some of these kinds of things because the brain is still developing.
Right.
But it can't be good for anyone to be focused on that. And the question that I wanted to ask you is, have you noticed a difference now that you're conscious of it in the way that you think or the things that you do on a daily basis?
Well, you got to start with, I wasn't that far down the road to begin with. That's number one. The average is what, 7 hours a day, almost 8 hours a day, something like that. And I was at 2 hours and something. And I thought that was ridiculous. And I just cut out any kind of death scrolling and just use it for work. And, the biggest, like, I've never used it in a gym or when I'm driving. Like, I saw a car there that just completely ran off the road and come back on. And the guy didn't even look up. He was still looking at his phone. And I was like, I told Serena, she was like, my God, is he drunk? I said, no, he's looking at his phone. That's why I don't ride road bikes anymore. It just got worse and worse. People, you see these, not just kids, but adults at the gym. They do a set and then they sit there and look at the phone. You're supposed to be doing another set within 1 minute, but that 1 minute turns to 3, 4, and 5 minutes of them just with their chin on their chest. I can't even do it. I can't even get my chin on my chest. I'm trying to do it right now. It's horrible what they're doing. And I know this makes me sound like Gran Torino. I get it. Okay, boomer, you boomer. Listen, kids, you're not doing yourself any fucking favors. I'm sorry, you're not. You're not. This is not good. We're not moving in a good direction. But you know what? No one's going to listen to me, so why should I even yap about it anymore? It's only getting worse and worse. We're not going in a safe direction. And I'm glad that, kind of like Ozzy Osbourne, I'm glad that I get to die before it gets really bad, right? Because I don't think it's going in a good direction.
Well, I think we're all, at least people listening to this podcast, are conscious of the fact that what goes into our body has an impact on what comes out, right? And
Right.
You and I talked, I think it was last week, about how diet plays a substantially bigger role in weight and health-related things than the exercise side of things. And so we only ever talk about food, so calories in, and exercise as calories out. But from a health perspective, what goes in, this is going to sound bad, any of our holes, right? Our ears, our mouth, our nose, and our eyes all plays into that from a health outcome perspective.
Hello, everyone. This is your ex.
And we're very conscious of what goes into our mouths, but we don't pay any attention to what's going in here. And I think if you can even reduce that a little bit, you become a lot more aware of what you're doing and where that time is going.
Right.
So tying that back into the legacy thing and tying that back into a conversation you and I have had a whole bunch of times, which is, I don't have time to do something different. I don't have time to go to the gym, or I don't have time to cook. I don't have time to do this. If you're spending 7 hours a day on this, even if it didn't have an impact on mental health or your eye health or any of those kinds of things, which we know that it does suck up the only thing we don't get any more of, which is time. And if you can reduce that even a little bit, it opens you up to have the ability to do everything else that you want to do. And it also stops poisoning you along the way by taking you into the crazy news cycle or the new TikTok trend or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does. And, you're right. We can't make more time. You get, and so people go, well, who cares? I'm doing exactly what I want to do with my time. And, it's kind of like me looking around, this is coming full circle here, looking around during my first chemo back in 2007 going, my God, I thought I was doing a lot of good. All I was doing was making money and helping rich people and celebrities look a certain way. And that didn't sit well with me, right? So when you're sitting there looking at your life, and I feel like back then I was not even 45 yet, you look back and you go, okay, my young life, I could have done a lot more, right? And you start looking at that, right? Until one day you end up on the phone ordering a Corvette. But we're not getting the time back, number one. I don't believe you when you tell me this is what you want to do with your time, because it's a pathetic use of time. And the promise my entire life, even before computers, the promise has always been that technology gives you more time. Microwave oven, more time. Teflon pan, you don't have to scour. You could just eat, wipe it out, more time, right? You name the product. You don't have to go outside and hang clothes anymore. We have an indoor dryer, right? Indoor refrigeration. You don't have to have what was called an ice box to keep things cold. And on and on and on. All of these things were designed to make more time. And then the computer comes around. Well, Vinnie, this is going to save a lot more time. How? Well, you get to work from home. Oh, okay. How's that going? Every company out there is trying to get people back in the office now. So how is that going? How are we doing with that? Right? You can order stuff on Grubhub and it just shows up. Great. Something else you've taken out of your life. Dinner time with family. Good job. Good job. We don't even, we used to have to go. That's why if you see any of these videos online now, you see people going crazy. A cop will stop someone and they start yelling at the cop, right? People don't know how to react with other people anymore at all, right? Because we want something and we just go right to Amazon. By the way, folks, before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com, click through the banner, puts a little coal in the fire, gets my train down the track. But anyway, we get everything on Amazon, everything. We buy soap, we buy toothpaste. I can't tell you the last time I was actually in a drugstore at all.
So, Vinnie, I'm spending some time with my business partners and some of my closest friends over the last 2 weeks.
Right.
They have a 19-year-old son. And I asked yesterday if he's ever bought anything in a store, because he had 7 different Amazon packages delivered in a single day from 7 different orders. All one individual thing that he ordered when he realized that he needed it. And they all came the next day. And they were all this big.
Right.
It's like little things. And we just have forgotten that there's like stores a quarter mile down the street, right? It's not like they live in the middle of nowhere. It's so easy to do these things now. It's so easy to get lost in this.
Yeah.
It's so easy to order something healthy on Grubhub that we forget that for 2 minutes worth of extra work, we can get it now, or we can get it in a much better form by making it ourselves.
Look, I'm guilty of, and we're guilty of, Serena has her little TV room upstairs. I have a man cave down here, and I also have the outdoor television. Now, I'm not big on television this time of year, but football season's coming up. I'm getting ready to get big on television, right? We don't watch television together. I cannot stand those programs she watches, and she can't stand what I watch. If we didn't have dinner together, if we didn't, she does all the cooking. If she needs help, I help. I do all the cleaning, and she's in the kitchen milling around. That's when the conversation happens. That's when the family time happens, when we have dinner together. A lot of times we have breakfast together. We're lucky that way, right? We don't have to stop work. A lot of times we're talking to you while we're cleaning up from breakfast. That's when it's like, give Chris a call, find out what's going on. That's when we do everything, and we have time together. If if everything came from Grubhub, and I'm saying Grubhub, but there's probably other names about the companies or whatever, none of that would happen. I would just grab my food, throw it on a TV tray, and come downstairs. Right? We have to make a point of being together. And I think it's important for a lot of couples to do that. And people should do that with relatives and friends and whatever. Don't just sock away. It's not just about the phone at the gym. It's we all have these personal devices that we now have relationships with where that shouldn't be the relationship. The relationship should be something else. Right?
Yeah. And not just from a mental health perspective, but the one thing they always blow over with the blue zone studies is it's not about the diet as much as it is about all of the other things that they do in those areas. And one of the biggest things is having social connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will tell you, I don't like most people. If I could live up in the mountains, which I do, and not have to see people most days, I'm okay with that. But you still have to find a connection somewhere, whether it's with your significant other, your kids, your family, because this is not a substitution for that.
Right.
Even as much as AI has come along and it can be your therapist, all of those kinds of things, it's not the same thing as having a person push back against you or commiserate with you or just to be there to listen.
Yeah, basic human connection. And Chris, we're going to make that the final word because I have another podcast to do. Folks, PureVitaminClub.com. The show is sponsored by PureVitaminClub.com. Everything is shipping all the time. As a matter of fact, we're not even seeing complaints anymore about the nut butter because I stopped shipping nut butter altogether until we could find a better solution. That was making us look bad as a company. So I said, Chris, we're going to put that on hold and we're just going to concentrate right now on vitamins and coffee. So go to purecoffeeclub.com to get the coffee and go to purevitaminclub.com to get the vitamins. Chris, when are we going to unleash our new site? Do you know? Any idea?
I just got an email. I haven't read it yet, but I got it since we've been on here, which is what made me look at this stupid device about 2 minutes ago.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what's going on because we have some exciting news coming. We have a lot of stuff coming in August. So stay tuned to everything we're doing. Rate and review this podcast. Tell a friend, all that good stuff. I found the song by Ray Stevens. Ray Stevens, whenever anything would happen when I was a kid, Ray Stevens would figure it out first, and he would be the first to get to a song. Chris, we're going to play this song on the way out, and hang in there because I may ask you about the song. So on behalf of Chris Shaffer, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with Ray Stevens talking about the mid-70s phenomenon known as streaking. Here we go.